Hey, this is the Alien Annihilators, Book 2, The Mages of Magic. Chapter 1, The Alien Menace. Cleo was happy with where her relationship was headed with Kenneth. He was a really nice guy and she could tell he really loved her. They had hardly known each other a year ago, but circumstances had brought them together. In the week or so leading to them saving the world together, Kenneth had confessed to loving her when they'd been sent back to Earth to start living a normal life again. They'd spent a lot of time together. Apparently, a new movie had released last week, a scary one, and tonight she and Kenneth were going to watch it together at her house. Knock, knock. Cleo opened the door, and there was Kenneth. He brought the movie he wanted to watch. I hope you like scary movies, Kenneth said, showing her the movie. The Alien Menace. Does it have to be about aliens? Cleo complained. She'd spent the last year trying to forget about the dreadful things. She nearly died at the hands of one, about 12 months ago. Well, if so, this is a reference to the previous book, the fight with Cleo and Selena. She'd almost, she'd almost died at the hands of an alien. And now Ken is talking about wanting to watch a movie about aliens, and she don't like that. Well, if you're too afraid, I guess we can, Kenneth began. What, afraid? Heck with that. I'm just in the mood for something else, she said. Once they were in the house, Kenneth spoke. I just feel like sooner or later we're gonna have to get used to aliens again. They're real, and one that was once very powerful was almost resurrected last year. So what if we watched it together, in preparation for whatever dark times are ahead? As far as she knew, they destroyed Lord Blazer's only hope of coming to life again, the orb of power. She wanted to believe that was the end of it, and Melinda would give up. But that was definitely wishful thinking. Cleo tried not to stress out about it. She said, if you think that's a good idea, who am I to argue? The TV was in her room next to her bed. Cleo sat in bed in front of the TV while Kenneth put the disc in the Blu-ray player. Kenneth turned on the TV and sat next to her. This is gonna be so awesome, he said, anticipation in his voice. So they watched the movie together. It was about three teenagers who found out one of their fellow students wasn't human at all. They were an alien sent to Earth to become like the humans, learn to blend in, to hide a sinister objective. Like Selena, Cleo thought, the alien she'd killed a year ago. She'd pulled something exactly like the one in the movie. Halfway through the movie, Cleo paused it. She looked at Kenneth. Where did you hear about this movie? She asked. Kenneth frowned. He thought about it for a second. Well, I was browsing movies at a local movie store, and the title caught my attention. Is this movie based on anything in real life? She asked. It's just a fictional story. I know that we've experienced aliens in real life, but this movie has to be based on fiction. Most people don't even know aliens exist, he said. The movie shared an eerie similarity to the events they had been through last year, and Cleo didn't believe in coincidences. Why did someone make a movie about us? Who did this? Can we just keep watching the movie? We can make crazy theories later, Kenneth complained. Cleo didn't like being called crazy and didn't like him dismissing her suspicions, but she unpaused the movie. Eventually it was over and the credits rolled. Kenneth Cleo looked to Kenneth. How is it possible to make a movie about such unusual events and accidentally make it nearly identical to actual Someone had to have based this on someone had to have based this story on us. But who and why? Cleo got out of bed and drank from a bottle of water. Thinking about this gave her a headache. Am I overthinking this? She wondered. As the credits rolled a bit more, Kenneth's face turned surprised. He grabbed the remote and paused the movie. So, you remember Brandon Brunt, right? Kenneth asked. So, of course, y'all know Brandon is like the mage from the previous book. And like, he's the one that was helping them fight against the aliens. Cleo was confused. Yeah, what about him? I don't know why, but he directed this movie and made us the main characters. Chapter 2, The Alien Menace Part 2. Cleo looked at the words that followed the credits. I, Brandon Brunt, have a message for Cleo and friends. Seek this movie's sequel, and you shall receive my message. He made this movie just to tell us he has a message for us? Cleo asked, not really convinced. She knew Brandon was a powerful and talented wizard. He could probably teleport a scroll to her doorstep if he wanted to. Why? I don't know. It could have something to do with secrecy. If Melinda has a sinister plan brewing, and Brandon knows about it, she'd do anything she can to stop us from receiving the message. Cleo got up and paced the room. If this is true, then I suppose this is the solution. Brandon may have directed this movie, and somehow got it past the supposed magical barrier, stopping messages being sent to Earth. Kenneth nodded. The barrier is probably intended to block off a certain type of magic, the kind that sends messages to Earth. If Brandon used magic to send a copy of a movie to Earth, well, Melinda has no reason to block off that sort of thing, certainly. Cleo fell silent, contemplating. Then she spoke. A sequel? Like another movie? What the heck's that gonna be like? It'd have to follow the events at the Lonely Temple. But honestly, it can't be an actual sequel to this movie, because it's just a waste of time and money. I guess we'll just have to find out when the sequel releases, whenever that is, Cleo said. Kenneth considered for a moment, then said, the guy at the store, he said something about a sequel being in production, and even heard it was near completion. If it were an actual movie, that would be quite unusual. Two movies releasing within a few days of each other. Unless, Cleo completed the sentence, unless it's not a movie at all. It could simply be disguised as a movie, title and box art and all, but in actuality it could be just a message Brandon intends to send us. To send to us. Kenneth looked at his phone briefly and looked up. The movie's releasing tomorrow, right when stores open at 9 a.m. Perfect. We can go pick it up together. Be ready, okay? I'll pick you up. Kenneth stretched and got up. He walked to the open door, waved goodbye, and went through, closing it behind him. Chapter 3, Brandon's Message. Once they'd picked up the sequel from the store the following day, they went right to Cleo's house and went up to her room. Kenneth popped in the disc, and they sat together in front of the screen. Brandon's face appeared on the TV. He was probably in his late 40s, and he naturally had a worried look. As a descendant of Gregory Brunt, he felt a strong desire to carry out the legacy he left and stop Lord Blazer's revival at all costs. He tried to be brave, but the fear of failing his ancestor weighed heavily on him. Cleo, Kenneth, hello. If you're watching this, then my plan has worked. If you remember correctly, I told you that you would be informed of any developments involving Lord Blazer and his resurrection. Well, after 12 months of tracking and monitoring Melinda's movements, I fear I've stumbled across a plan most detrimental to your world. To understand the plan, you must first understand the object Melinda wished to use to revive Lord Blazer, the Orb of Power. The Orb of Power had the power to grant a dying soul not only new life, but extraordinary power, power beyond our wildest imagination. But the orb did not always exist. It was conceived from Lord Blazer's father, Lord Torchus. Lord Torchus, knowing he would not live long enough to fulfill the prophesied takeover of Earth, cast a spell that inserted all of his power into a little orb and put it in a temple on an isolated planet. He told his son Lord Blazer where the orb was, should he ever need it, told him that when he does find other aliens who wish to serve him and raise him from the dead, should it come to that, they would need the essence of a human to enter the temple and access the powerful orb within. This is simply a means of locking out any other aliens who lust for this power. Without his powers to give him strength, Lord Torchus steadily weakened, both in body and in mind. Since this is the fate he'd chosen, most of the doctors on his planet did not believe their resources were well used, just to keep him living a few years longer. Well, my assumption was that Lord Torchus passed away centuries ago, well before Lord Blazer's first invasion of Earth in 1220. But based on what I've gathered from my spying techniques, Lord Torchus isn't quite dead yet. The doctors must have decided that the old fool was worth keeping alive, and that decision is going to pay off very soon if we don't stop Melinda. Lord Torchus may be weak, but because of the sheer persistence of the medical staff operating on him, he still has a lot of power left to offer. By sending waves of power to his son and sacrificing himself in the process, Lord Blazer has a considerable chance of returning back to his normal self, powerful, deadly, and ready to destroy. The image cut to black for a second, then words appeared on screen. Don't miss the epic conclusion to this trilogy. The Alien Menace Part 3 is on the way. Chapter 4, Worried and Afraid. When the movie had ended, Kenneth had searched when the next movie would come out. It would be out that night at 7 p.m. So, we already have a lot to talk about while we wait for this next movie, Kenneth began. Yeah, I can't believe it. Everything we went through last year. They pretty much had a backup plan the whole time, didn't they? We should be grateful we've delayed it for as long as we have. Heck, it's been pretty peaceful for the last year, hasn't it? We've had a chance to get to know each other outside of this alien business. It's been great, right? Cleo thought back on it all. They had spent a lot of time together, going on regular dates and hanging out all the time. I might have saved the world, but I also bought me and Kenneth more time to develop and strengthen our relationship. That made Cleo quite pleased with herself. Of course it has, she said in response. I just wish life could be the way it was before, when the worst thing I worried about was whether or not to ask you to prom. She blushed a little. I mean, I just miss the world I lived in before, where the smaller things were what caught my attention, instead of those dead-eyed scaleheads. I see what you mean. I used to be so worried about what video games I'd play next. Now I'm more worried about what plots and schemes Melinda's devising next. Cleo could see the worry in Kenneth's eyes and knew he had to be strong for her. Stop worrying, Cleo. We've proven that we can make it through anything. As long as we're together, Melinda doesn't stand a chance. Cleo got close to him on the bed and pecked him on the lips. I hope you're right. she whispered against his lips. I know I'm right, he whispered back. Chapter 5: The Cancelled Movie. Cleo and Kenneth had started their drive to the movie store at 6:30 p.m. When they got there, it was 6:59 p.m. The third movie would be out very soon. They entered the store, and Kenneth inquired about the third movie in the Alien Menace series. I got the notification just a minute ago. The movie's been cancelled. Kenneth began to ask why, but realized this guy probably wouldn't even know the real reason it was cancelled. He was probably told it had something to do with insufficient budgets and whatnot. So when Kenneth told Cleo the bad news, she hung her head in disappointment, and they both went to the car. Once they pulled out of the car park, Cleo asked, "You think Melinda knows about Brandon's messages to us? Maybe that's why Brandon's telling him the movie's cancelled. It might be way too risky for him to do it again at this stage. I think we just gotta give it some time. If he has another message for us, he'll get it to us eventually. Now let's get back to your place." When they'd gotten back, Cleo and Kenneth had talked a little more, then retired to bed around 10 p.m. Cleo, wake up. Someone's at the door," Kenneth said. Groggily, Cleo got up and looked at the time. 3 a.m. What the hell? Cleo grabbed her gauntlet and walked downstairs, Kenneth right behind her. When they got to the front door, Cleo yelled, "Who's that? What's your name?" "It's me, Brandon. Open the damn door," he said. Kenneth began to open the door, but Cleo held an arm out to stop him. "We don't know it's him, Kenneth. It could be an alien impersonating him," Cleo reminded him, then yelled out, "In the message you sent to us, what colored shirt were you wearing? And what did it say?" "It was orange, and it said, beware." "It was orange, and it said, beware aliens aboard." Kenneth opened the door and allowed Brandon in. "Cleo, Kenneth, please do not be mad, but I've put you both in grave danger. I used a strong magical spell to teleport myself to your house. Melinda has reinforcements inbound as we speak. We need to get out of here." So in the next chapter, they're going to be escaping Melinda, and her reinforcements are trying to track them down and stop them from foiling her plan to resurrect Lord Blazer. And that's it for this video. Remember, subscribe and show your support for this series in the comments. And goodbye.